year is 1942, and like thousands of young men in his generation, Arthur Kornberg has joined the Navy. Luckily, Arthur is far from the worst of the fighting, serving as a ship's doctor in the U.S. Coast Guard and stationed in the Caribbean. Okay, so it's not exactly sunbathing and margaritas, but the weather is warm, and Arthur fully expects to remain on Coast Guard duty for the duration of the war. His sun-kissed service is cut short, however, when he receives a message from Dr. Rolla Dyer, director of the National Institutes of Health. Dr. Dyer had just read a research paper that Kornberg penned in medical school, studying the prevalence of a latent form of jaundice. The U.S. government is eager for any new information about jaundice after a recent outbreak, and Arthur's study greatly impresses the NIH director. Dyer arranges for Kornberg to be reassigned to the NIH, and Arthur leaves behind what he later calls the most wonderful vacation in my life.
What Arthur doesn't yet realize is that his medical school paper and subsequent reassignment are a turning point in his career, one that has just put him on the path to helping decode the secrets of life itself. This is the story of a CUNY graduate who became a Nobel Laureate and the discovery of DNA polymerase.
Arthur's trip back from the Caribbean wasn't the only long journey for a Kornberg. Arthur's parents, Joseph and Lena, also voyaged across the sea to escape the diminishing prospects for Jews in Austrian Galicia and settle in Brooklyn, New York, where Arthur was born in 1918. It was a humble existence for the family, with Joseph working in a Lower East Side sweatshop for almost 30 years before finally saving enough money to open a hardware store where Arthur worked at the age of 9. Neither of Arthur's parents had a formal education, and while other aspiring scientists his age collected insects or rocks, young Arthur collected discarded matchbook covers from the streets and subway stations of New York. But his parents were intent on getting their children the education they hadn't had, and Arthur proved to be an excellent student. After graduating early from high school, Arthur chose to enroll in the prestigious City College. It was a pedigree he paid for with a 3-hour round trip each day from Bath Beach. Luckily, for this working-class kid from Brooklyn, the tuition itself was free. Judging his prospects for a research position to be slim at the height of the Great Depression, Arthur chose to pursue medicine. With the money saved on tuition, Arthur graduated from City College in 1937 and was able to attend medical school at the University of Rochester. It was here in medical school where Arthur undertook the study that would win him his research position 5 years later. But it was simple curiosity rather than ambition that prompted his work. Arthur suffered from a chronic form of mild jaundice, a discoloration of the skin and eyes resulting from the body's failure to properly break down hemoglobin in the blood. While in medical school, Arthur was surprised to discover other students who shared his condition and decided to conduct a study to determine how prevalent it was among his classmates. Unbeknownst to Arthur at the time, this form of jaundice had first been reported 40 years earlier by the French physician Augustin Gilbert, who recognized the condition as hereditary. Arthur's study provided valuable information to those interested in the condition, and when his paper was published in 1942, Dr. Rolla Dyer eagerly invited its author to join the National Institutes of Health. In his autobiography published in 1989, Arthur Kornberg describes the history of science in the 20th century as a succession of what he calls hunters. These hunters were scientists seeking to extend life by looking for the causes of disease. The first of them were the microbe hunters, scientists who sought to explain every disease by finding its corresponding bacteria or parasite. But by the 1930s, scientists had realized that there were many illnesses not caused by microbial infections. Diseases like scurvy, beriberi, and pellagra were found to be the result of a lack of certain nutrients in the body, and so the microbe hunters were followed by the vitamin hunters. It was vitamin hunting that Arthur first undertook after joining the NIH in 1942. His job was to feed specialized diets to lab rats and determine why certain antibiotics were causing blood disorders. The theory was that a vitamin deficiency of some kind might be the culprit. But Arthur soon grew dissatisfied with his work in the nutrition lab. It was clear to Arthur that while vitamins could be linked to certain diseases, scientists knew next to nothing about what they actually did in the body. Consequently, Arthur turned his attention to the next generation of scientists, the enzyme hunters. Enzymes are the protein molecules at the root of virtually all chemical reactions in the body, and they seem to be the real reason for the importance of vitamins. In 1953, Arthur left the NIH to become head of the microbiology department in Washington University at St. Louis. There, he focused his attention on nucleotides, molecules that are the building blocks of the nucleic acids DNA and RNA. Scientists knew what nucleic acids were made of, but not how they were made. And by the following year, Arthur and his colleagues had identified the enzymes responsible for creating all 5 of the nucleotides that make up RNA and DNA. Now that he knew how the components were made, he could look for the enzyme that put them together. After hearing that his former mentor, Severo Ochoa, had made major strides towards the synthesis of RNA, Arthur zeroed in on the other nucleic acid, and now household name, DNA. In a series of experiments, Arthur combined extracts from E. coli bacteria, which he hoped would contain the mystery enzyme, with the nucleotide components that would form DNA. By studying their reactions and slowly removing their proteins that were not involved, he finally found it, DNA polymerase I. Arthur Kornberg's discovery of DNA polymerase opened the floodgates to an entire field of genetic science, including gene splicing and genetic engineering. For his own part, Arthur continued to study the enzymology of DNA for another 30 years. Among his accomplishments was the first replication of viable DNA in a lab. It was a feat the media inaccurately described as the creation of life in a test tube, casting Arthur as a kind of modern Dr. Frankenstein.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Like the microbe, vitamin, and enzyme hunters before them, Arthur had jump-started another generation of medical researchers, the gene hunters. These molecular biologists sought solutions to disease by looking for the specific genes connected to biological functions and dysfunction. And among their discoveries were the specific genetic mutations that cause Gilbert's disease, that hereditary form of jaundice which had prompted Arthur to conduct the medical school study, launching his career. In 1959, Arthur Kornberg was awarded the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine, along with his earlier mentor and colleague, Dr. Severo Ochoa, for their discovery of the mechanisms in the biological synthesis of RNA and DNA.
With recent developments like genetic sequencing and gene editing, the gene hunters that arose after Arthur's discovery continue their work to this day. But a century of searching for the roots of disease begs the question, who are the next hunters? Will they be looking somewhere even more fundamental, beyond the molecular level? Or will their search take them to some field we haven't even conceived of? All we can say is that when it comes to the secrets of life, the hunt will surely continue.